On April 1st, I watched From Up on Poppy Hill. Right off the bat, they introduced the whole family, a lot of characters to keep track of. The two main characters already have a hint of falling in love at the very start. Even as a joke, it felt very spoiled or rushed. And they spend way too much time together in the movie. At some points, I was thinking I could be re-watching my favorite scenes from Mononoke. Because a lot of people say this is a very average movie. Not in terms of quality, but it feels very real life and there's not so much fiction and fantasy. After Umi shows the photo to Shun, he just suddenly goes and be awkward with her. I bet a lot of people relate to that. Without saying anything, the other characters automatically know something's off between them. When the news finally breaks, the conflict feels like a very real-life scenario of awkwardness. There's no real conflict to convince the chairman. He also asks about the dad part very quickly out of nowhere, which also makes it feel very spoon-fed. I was thinking, where's the sad part? And then it did, at some moments, really did pull my heartstrings. This movie feels very fast-paced, which is good, but also maybe feels a bit rushed. But I guess it had something to do with the modern attention spans at that time in 2011. The whole who's the real dad part is kind of confusing. Even by the end, I was still confused. But at least I know by reading the comments before watching the movie that they're not really related in that way. If not, it will be really weird. But at least it's not so typical, it also feels different. The ending doesn't really show anything that happens after that, which leaves us wondering. This movie just feels like it's just spoon-feeding us. Because of how fast the characters meet and they're always together and their faces look the same too. And I really noticed the music in this one, it elevated the scenes. In Mononoke, I didn't even notice the music because I was focusing on the action and there's a lot of it there. Basically, the movie can be summarized to clean up and then cue the happy ending. But the more I watched this movie, the more it started to hold up on its own. I stopped thinking about Mononoke and I was invested in this story. Obviously, this doesn't have gut-wrenching action, but the conflict feels very real and relatable. That's the thing that makes it very special. It just feels like an average Joe movie of real-life scenarios and conflict. The character has also very good traits of being responsible and independent. Even when the story is just kind of typical, but it still made me sad. Even though the characters are always together, it's so obvious, but it also feels very different. I'm not only talking about the dad part, but just the overall, the feeling of it also feels very different. Even though it's the most basic and average kind of movie, but it has that special sauce that just makes it feel very special. And one silly thing I want to mention is that I see people comment saying things like, oh, I wish my classmates in school were so enthusiastic and so teamwork like in the movie where they clean up the building. I just think that comment is very silly and ridiculous. Like, come on, at one point you're all gonna have to work together to do something. That's just the nature of real life. So back to this movie, it's very charming, it's very special, very good music, kinda confusing but very real. This one is an 8 out of 10.